am so honored to be here, and I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity just to speak with you for a bit. I was going to make some smart aleck quip about Carol and I and our friendship and how it's been challenged by my being placed between Warren Buffett and Michael Sorrell on the program. But seeing those children just then again, it's easy to look in their faces, embrace and enjoy the laughter, see their amazing challenge in the built or unbuilt environment, and realize this is our purpose. That there actually is no other purpose. And no matter where you're coming from in one of the partner organizations or communities, or whether you're like we in Dallas, investigating purpose-built communities more thoroughly and trying to figure out how to apply this creative response to our city as we battle for 30 years now racism, inequity, lack of economic opportunity, and a fair shot in the game of life in Dallas, Texas. That really is all any of us want, I expect. Certainly what we all need. I'm operating this afternoon with some assumptions that I think are absolutely correct. One is that I'm in a room filled with people who are doing some of the most important, the best, and the hardest work to be done in our nation today. And I take great comfort in the fact that you're doing what you do because it's never been more important than now. I pray every night that what we see that's so hateful and challenging in media and across the United States is the death throes of racism and hatred in our culture. That's what I hope. Until everyone has the opportunity my grandchildren have, our job is not done. Until we overcome the naivete of white privilege, until we embrace our brothers and our sisters from every corner of the world and from every place in this nation as not only equal, but as equals we would promote and partner with and champion, our work is not done. And so it's clear that our purpose is to make a difference. It's clear that we've come to the front at a crucial moment in the life of this nation. And it also is very clear to me that we have the tools here to change our cities. You're all leaders. That's another assumption that I'm making. And I think that our approach to leadership comes from our own experience. I would also argue that leadership is more art than science. It's fraught with great challenges, lots of missteps, and loads of responsibility. And I know you know what I'm talking about because you assume the role of leader. And so it's against this backdrop of inclusiveness and a commitment to overcome the evils that threaten our communities and attempt to destroy the lives of our children. It's with this backdrop that I speak with you today in more general terms about how to lead. But the leadership principles that I'm bringing today are not mine. And I think if we could have a conversation about your work, you would agree that the leadership principles you follow are not yours. Because if we're doing it right, the truth bubbles up from underneath. And the wisdom of the neighborhood takes over. And we begin to adjust and we're formed and shaped, if we're wise, to be catalytic leaders in ways that the community directs, not that we predetermine because we've read some book. I want to spend a few moments providing some context to my world and to where, in essence, the leadership principles that I'm embracing today have come from. And I've chosen several slides that I'm going to show you here in just a moment that align clearly with the purpose-built community's mission and life. Is that Dr. Sorrell? Come on in, brother. You don't need to sneak in. We're glad you're here. Can't control American Airlines. I mean, come on. Give this man a round of applause. If you haven't heard of Michael Sorrell, Paul Quinn College president, you're going to hear from him tomorrow at lunch, right? And he's one of my fast friends and one of my mentors and models. And it's just good to see you, brother. It's just good to see you. I don't mean to embarrass you, but it's just good to see you. So I want to show you some images of our work that aligns with Purpose-Built Community's mission. And as I go along, I'm going to give you a little commentary that's going to be honest. Because, hey, can we just admit this to each other? Our stuff sometimes ain't that good. Hey, we misfire a bunch. And I love the theme slide. Good enough's not good enough. We don't coast. But even when we try not to coast, there are things that happen that bring pressure to leaders, and leaders have to know how to respond. So let's just look for a second here. Years ago, after we turned our food delivery system over to the community, we in essence developed a 24/7 think tank. And we started listening to the community as never before. Because the folks who used our food distribution center that had been sort of the basis of our founding in 1988, by 1994, the neighborhood folk who used that food distribution center were actually running it. And about 1998, I wrote a little white paper just to document what I was hearing. I called it the testimony of the leaders from the community. And one of the things they said to me over and over and over again was, Larry, we need housing. We need housing for families, workforce housing, and we need housing for homeless people who are on our streets. And so I listened to that literally for several years and finally had the sense to write down a vision statement, kind of a white paper about housing. And I shared it with our staff and with folks in the neighborhood, and everyone was happy with it. And then I just put it in a file and stuck it back and didn't think about it again, which is really stupid, but that's what I did. And one of our attorneys in our public interest law firm came to me about 2 years later and threw down on the desk incorporation papers for, at that time, what was known as Central Dallas Community Development Corporation. And I said, John, what is this? And he said, well, it's incorporation papers for a CDC. We now can do housing. And I said, well, where'd you get that? Where'd that come from? He said, well, you wrote the white paper 2 years ago and said, I thought you were serious about doing housing. So we started doing housing. And one of the things we learned was, in order to do housing at any scale, you have to have done housing already. Right? You know that feeling? And so we didn't know how to break into the game until we found this acre adjacent to an historic child care center that originally had been developed for children with special needs 50 years before. But they had this acre that was part of the planned development zone in Dallas and East Dallas in a largely Hispanic neighborhood that was old and with substandard housing. It required, the plan required that we build 18 affordable housing units. And so we bought the property, arranged for conventional financing, and we built 21 units, 18 affordable and 3 market. And that property has gone through different iterations in terms of programming. Originally, it was filled with folks who needed low-income housing. And then it was filled with students from a university with which we partner, Abilene Christian University, and kids who were going to community college in Dallas County. And what the community college discovered was young people who went to community college but stayed at home were disadvantaged in terms of their progress for a lot of different reasons. And so this became a kind of a model program where college students were living with underclassmen, if you will, in the same community and taking advantage of their mixed experiences. Abilene Christian University now has a master lease on the whole building, but we built the building and proved we could do housing. The 5517 Columbia property is all the evidence you'll ever need that you should indeed look a gift horse in the mouth. This is a slice of East Dallas that was given to us by one of our big supporters, and it was so narrow and so difficult that we were only able to get 4 units onto the property. And it was so small that it was just difficult to manage. And so today it houses ex-offenders in a reentry ministry that we were able to partner with to put it to good use. And so we're happy with that. Those 2 developments happened at about the same time. And then we decided that we needed to rearrange all of our offices because we were growing so, and I won't go into all the details of that, but we got under contract in 2007 an abandoned 15-story office building in downtown Dallas. And we got a forward commitment in 2007 for low-income housing tax credits. We also applied new markets tax credits. I think the first time in the country that new markets were applied legally to projects that use LIHTC. We also used historic. And we used philanthropy, and we used city money, and we created the first affordable downtown housing development in memory in Dallas, Texas. 200 units of housing, 100 units that were based on rents that were established by the requirements of the LIHTC fund. In other words, if you made $30,000 or more, you couldn't live here. So you're talking about people who make less than $30,000 in 100 units. And then there were 100 units that were set aside for homeless persons or for persons in serious jeopardy of becoming homeless. And then on floor 15 and 16, we had 6 condos for sale at market rates. On floors 1 to 3, we had retail on 1 and office on 2 and 3. And so we had a mixed-use, mixed-income community that I called our neighborhood in vertical. It's also been a real blessing to people who needed housing. There's lots of people who've been there since we opened. It's also been a difficult project, and we're just now getting a handle on some ways to handle problems with people who are doing criminal activity in the building. But we're making progress. We completed this in 2010. And so we kind of, with this project, we're kind of on the map in Dallas. This is the Lone Star Gas Lofts, phases 1 and 2 of this project. We did this in a partnership with Larry and Ted Hamilton's company, Hamilton Partners. And one of the things that's most impressive to me and important to me is we got 170 affordable units, again, in downtown. This is a 4-building development that was built in the 20s and 70s. And that project has worked really, really well, and it's provided workforce housing for folks who want to work downtown and live downtown. It's been a really masterful project. And the restoration, the historic restoration of the buildings, the old buildings, have been really cool. I threw this in just to show you that we're diversified. We also do development for profit. We tried to do this as nonprofit, using, again, LIHTC funds and working with very, very low-income folks who populate the area, who many of them happen to be homeless. That didn't go over well with the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I have all kinds of memorabilia from those meetings that I could share with you about why it didn't work. So we backed off of that, but got into a partnership with Hamilton Properties again, actually bought the building, the old Plaza Hotel, and we've turned it into Lorenzo. And so it's a mid-range convention hotel in terms of price that took a blighted building and renewed it in a strategic corner, in the downtown area. It's a great place to stay if you're ever in Dallas. And we got a development fee out of that, which is really nice. This is a partnership we did with Bank of America, CDC, again, using funding for senior housing and for workforce housing. You can see the stats on there. 140 High Point Senior completed in 2013, 161 unit for High Point Family completed in 2016. This took an existing housing development and raised it and replaced it with really high quality living. The senior housing filled up immediately, and the family housing is full as well. And it's really a transformational project for this area of our town. Built environment, if you're a builder or an architect or a developer, built environment is spiritual. And you don't realize that until it's taken away from you. But we have some people who have been born into substandard, deplorable built environments that create stress factors that affect their physical and mental health as well as their ability to perform. You cannot underestimate the power of built environment, especially if it's improving things. It's powerful either way. But if you're improving things, it really has impact. This project should make everybody who knows me laugh. The cottages at Hickory Crossing are 50 400 square foot small homes located right across the street from our Opportunity Center that I'm going to show you in a moment. And we work with Dallas County off of a list of 300 eligible residents who are homeless to select 50 who would move into these cottages. In order to live in a cottage, you have to be chronically homeless, disabled, with some mental health issue, and you have to have been in jail. You are part of the 300 top consumers of housing from the county, and your cost to Dallas County annually is over $40,000 a year to stay outside. I asked the county judge one time if he'd just give me that $40,000 and I'd create some kind of company and pay all my employees $35,000. That'd be a better use of the money, but he laughed at me and patted me on the back, which is not atypical. We can house people in this development, provide high-touch concierge services from CitySquare's team, and mental health services from Metro Care for less than $15,000 a year, a net savings to the county per unit of $25,000 a year. The county liked those numbers, and so the county helped us, the city helped us, the Sal Family Foundation helped us, and others helped us build this. It took forever. I won't go into that, but it's an iconic project that, frankly, is hard as hell to run because we've got 50 very, very sick people living there. And they're sick because of some circumstance that landed them on the street for a long, long time. And their impact on our community has been negative because of things they can't control, as in getting housing. We use housing first as our mode of operation. You don't have to go through a screening process with us beyond what Dallas County has provided. And we don't provide you with training before you get in to make you eligible. If you're homeless for this project, you're eligible. It's housing first with supportive services that we provide. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do in this housing. You can stay as long as you want. And our job is to persuade you to stay and help us make the community better. We're making progress on that, but it has been difficult. I left this down there. Coming spring of 2015, we actually opened a year ago in November, so we were a little bit late. This is the cottages from above, 2 years ago probably in the midst of the wettest year in the history of the state of Texas, which didn't help our construction. This is our Opportunity Center, which is right across the street from the cottages. And here we have a collective impact center that involves a lot of our programs, including AmeriCorps, the summer food program, our food distribution program, all of our workforce training programs and initiatives, as well as some administrative offices. We also have partners there, Workforce Solutions of Greater Dallas, which is the Texas Employment Commission expression in Dallas County and beyond. And we have LIFT, Literacy Instruction for Texas. We have Perscolas, an outfit out of the Bronx that does computer training for young people. And we're open. We have all kinds of community groups that meet there, and we're open to other partners. Partnerships that create collective impact centers like this are really, really cool. And like housing homeless people who've been on the street for 15 years, it's really, really hard. And it doesn't just happen because you throw people together in a development. We've got great synergy with some of our partners and not as great with others, but we're giving attention to that, and we're being very frank with them as they are with us about how we can make it better, how some may need to leave and others may need to come, but that's part of leadership, right? We've been in the community health services business since 1997 in a partnership with what's now Baylor Scott & White. This is a 7,000 square foot clinic building that we operate out of right at the gate of Fair Park. And we have radically changed our delivery system in the last 3 months. We're still in the middle of that. Everything changes when you're running an organization. It never stays the same, right? You know that. There are all kinds of curveballs along the way. And so we have 2 new physicians on board who are like Marcus Welby. I date myself. These are guys who insist on a practice that allows them to go into the community, black bag in hand, and do house calls. They come to the cottages to take care of the people who live there, and they're going to be going door to door with neighbors who are in the South Dallas Fair Park area. Here's our current target. We just purchased the Forest Theater, which is located historically at the corner of Martin Luther King and Highway 175. This is an iconic theater in the South Dallas Fair Park area that has been unused and basically vacant for about a decade. We had a donor who really believes in the arts and the transformative power of the arts and education, and so we're in the middle right now of a campaign to redo the Forest Theater. It's really going to be something else. All of this has resulted in, and this is really, I think, true. I think my staff would agree with this. Our brand promise in Dallas is actually to tell you we're the group in Dallas that's really serious about fighting poverty. But the result has been, because of what people have seen, experience, competency, creativity, community trust, and relationships. That's when we tell people we're not competent. Commitment to growth and great partnerships. That's kind of who we are in the city. And so that's the background, if you will, or the soil from which the leadership principles that I'm now going to quickly move through is important. Leadership lessons. Let people fail. Failure is seldom fatal. And when you prohibit failure, you squash innovation. And when I say let people fail, I'm not talking about children or parents. I'm talking about folk on your team. Give them their head. Let them go with their ideas. As Warren Buffett said, take a risk on a good idea. Take a risk on people with good ideas. Leaders who micromanage and control are going to be frustrated in the work that we do. And in the process, they're going to discourage experimentation and breakthroughs. If you never fail, and we've said this for years to our team, if you never fail, you're really probably not trying hard enough. Your vision's not clear enough. Your faith's not strong enough. You need to reconsider how you're doing this. The fear of failure can chain a leader to the catwalk that looks down on the team, limiting both sides of that equation. So the team's scared to death and the leader's insecure. We got to move past that somehow. Maybe we need some therapy. But seriously, in order to really build teams like we need for this process, you're going to have to let people fail with some crazy ideas. Number 2, don't dismiss the difficult. Probably no great artistic, revolutionary, stupendous idea has ever been achieved because people were saying how difficult it would be. I got to tell you, when I think about the golf course in Eastlake, and I think about the conditions of that neighborhood before Mr. Cousins stepped in, and I think about the amazing development that I saw yesterday at Highlander, I think that all had to be really, really hard. And what if someone who was afraid and wanted to be in control had carried the day and dismissed it because it was hard? By the very nature of our work, it's going to be hard. If it weren't hard, we probably would need to go somewhere else because it's the hardness we're trying to overcome. When people tell me it's too hard, I kind of get crazy. Because sure, it's hard, but it's not too hard. Something that kind of goes along with both of these other ones is forget the credits. Insisting on taking the credit for everything your group accomplished is folly. As a matter of fact, I would argue, take no credit. We tell our team, credit is only useful if it's passed along. Credit is not something to be hoarded or sequestered or claimed or listed. Credit is something that needs to be shared. If we hang on to the credit, we'll be led down blind alleys. Our vision will be dim and our thinking very small. At CitySquare, the executive team operates with this principle. If you make a mistake and fail, we take the blame. If your big idea gets us to first or second base and you've had a win, we throw a party. But you got to be intentional about that. This is going to sound like duplication here, but welcome the unreasonable. Our work is in desperate need of the innovation we talked about already. And so it's only by the unreasonable idea or activity that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. And so we can't shy away from the unreasonable. We've had some unreasonable ideas. I never will forget when we turned the food distribution center over to the neighborhood, how many people thought that was totally and completely unreasonable. All of them were from outside the community, by the way. When we bought 511 North Acker downtown, an old vacant building that needed a tax credit redo, people thought we were unreasonable. The Cottages and Housing First, and I've even got a partnership with PepsiCo that gained us about $1.5 million for the Opportunity Center. All unreasonable, but welcome the unreasonable because that's how you make progress. Give away what you need. I'll never forget the image of two little boys sitting outside on the curb at our regional center way back in the day on Haskell, and they had one banana between them. There was an older brother and a little brother, and I watched as the older brother looked at his little brother and looked at the banana 2 or 3 times and then peeled it perfectly and split it right in the center and handed his little brother the half of the banana that he really needed himself. You have to risk giving others what you think you need yourself for the good of the larger vision of the community with which you're working. And I could tell you lots of stories about that, but every time we've done that, whether it's to share our time or to direct funders to someone outside our organization because of the good of the community, every time we do that, it pays off for us. Give away what you need. Lead flat. Press decision-making down as deeply and as widely and broadly as you can in your organization. Create a team of leaders who will be the best followers you've ever had. But don't insist on allowing top-down leadership strategy or modeling to be the way you go. Top-down management guarantees that assets will be left on the table, the very assets you need. Give everyone a stake in what you're doing. Celebrate leadership far and wide and near. My staff loves this one. Cultivate chaos. Leaders who get things done shake things up. At CitySquare, we believe in ownership, because if people don't own it, they're not going to use it. It's not going to be what they want. So we believe in ownership. We also believe in chaos, because without chaos, there's not room for our faith to work. And if you believe in a higher power, I've noticed that higher power works wonders in the midst of chaos. When we have to be stretched so far that we have to trust beyond our ability. Value the counterintuitive. There are so many examples of that. Not what, not why, not how, not who, not where, not when, but what if? What if we actually just put people off the street into housing? What if we gave people who were workforce trainees cash supplements before they had a job? What if we created our own loan system? What if we moved upstream? What if we found out that the poor could actually save and create wealth for themselves if they were given an opportunity? Value the counterintuitive. You'll find that it's often very true and very effective. There are no stupid questions. And leadership has to model that by continually questioning everything around it, including its own decision or decisions. And so questions precede progress. Questions must be a part of the organizational culture. Persistent inquiry. Leaders model this commitment by questioning everything. And sometimes our staff meetings get off track because everyone's questioning everything. Almost through. Act beyond your reach. Here's where your faith comes in. Whether it's some kind of traditional faith, I would urge you to believe deeply and act on your faith. Face your data and build a bias for action. Data should never stop you from going toward the goal. It just needs to direct you as you make that approach. But act beyond your reach. This is my personal one. I don't know about y'all, but this is hard, and we do stuff that gets us in trouble. Speeches delivered, op-eds written, confrontations with power brokers had, positions staked out. You know what I'm talking about. All the stuff where you communicate all of this to the powers that be that don't understand it, don't believe it, don't appreciate it, and don't much like you. If you're a leader, you're sure enough going to lose some sleep. As a matter of fact, if you claim to be a leader today and you're not losing sleep, I would argue you may not be doing the right thing. And so what do you do when you're losing sleep because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring because of something you did yesterday that you still believe is correct? For me, it's very physical. I have to put my feet on the ground and just stand up. And every time I put my feet on the ground and stand up and thank God for another day, I find a strength I didn't know I had. I find a new angle on my argument. I find a new avenue for me to pursue as we pursue justice. We've been working on the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue in Dallas. A group of young ministers and some old people like me. And you know that thing's gone. And some other things are going to happen in Dallas that need to happen about that. Bad things need to go. And you may disagree, and I'll respectfully listen to your point of view, but we got to understand what the most important group in our whole consideration believes. And that's the group in the community that we're privileged to serve alongside of. And finally, if you're a leader today, you need to figure out how to have a clean handoff to the leader who's coming behind you. John Seibert, stand up. There's my successor right there, Dr. John Seibert. How long did we start working on this, John? 7 years ago? 7 years ago, John was a pastor in North Dallas, and he confided in me foolishly that he'd like to do something like this someday. And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yes." And so we started meeting together every month for 2 years. And he was so good, we advanced the schedule by a year. And so in 2015, he became the president and chief operating officer. And I'm privileged to still be the CEO to support his mission and to pursue his vision and to work on what we're going to do in terms of funding what we want. But you've got to think about that. And you've got to think about that with your board, and you've got to have influence on that process. And you've got to give your heritage, and your legacy, you got to give it away to the advantage of your successor. If you really believe in the community, that's what you got to do. I'm done. We got a little bit of time. We got about 8 minutes for Q&A because I talked too long, but that's typical too. I'd be glad to try to answer. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What led you to do this type of work?
The deconstruction of my faith post-seminary. I reached some conclusions about faith. The last church I served 25 years ago, I was to the point of telling them that I was believing more and more in less and less. That the stuff the church occupies itself with is not as important as we think it is, and the real important stuff is at the edges. But in my faith, the words of Jesus are replete with these values. You just don't find them expressed the way I would pursue or would like to pursue in the church typically. I know that's a blanket condemnation, I'm sorry, but I left parish ministry to do this because I was certain about that. I had a million other questions, but I believe more deeply than ever in the work of compassion and justice and equity. So that's why.
Thank you for an inspiring presentation. My question is, what would you say some of your measurable results from the work you've done in CitySquare?
That's great. We have an amazing team. We have a new chief program officer, Annie Lord, and she has a right-hand person, or actually has two right-hand people. Wendy Abel is leading that charge, and we're getting reams of data really about every program. You know, for example, 39 people who live in the cottages across the street, 39 of those homeless folks have been residents there for over 181 days. That's a great achievement in this work. We have data on employment for all of our work paths programs. So to your point, it's very valid, we've got to measure what we believe to be important, because if people are not making progress because of our partnership alongside them, we got to change what we can change to make it better. So we're inundated, and this is something John Seibert has already brought as innovation to our organization. You know, my role in the early days was to build it and keep it together and listen to the community. He's still doing that too, but his role is to make it more precisely describable, and that's happening. Thank you all very much. Y'all are awesome.